I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. This is Searching for Heroes, and I'm Benjamin Hall. We are joined today by, well, frankly, a real American hero. He was a kid who always flunked out of school, a young Marine who was sent to Vietnam, a rifleman in Delta Company who was blown up, badly wounded, and came home with medals on his chest, and a war still perhaps raging in his head. And then somehow that same man, he went on and he built billion-dollar companies. He founded GoDaddy, he built PXG, he signed the Giving Pledge, and today he and his wife Renee are pledging up to $7.5 million in matching funds for Semper Fi and America's Fund to support combat wounded service members and military families who are struggling, especially, and as we've talked about often on this podcast, through the holidays. Now on this episode, I'm joined by Marine Corps veteran, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and mental health advocate, Bob Parsons. We're going to talk about what happened to him in Vietnam, about the wounds you can see and the ones that you can't, his own battle with PTSD and how he finally found a way through it. We're going to ask also how a man who has carried trauma like that still found the discipline, the drive to build and rebuild companies, and whether that kind of resilience is something that you are born with or if it's something that you can learn. And perhaps, most importantly, what all of us can do to stand by veterans who feel most alone at this time of the year. So, thank you for joining us today. And, Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, nice to be here, Benjamin. Thank you.
Bob, when you look back at your life, and as I was saying in the introduction, always flunked out of high school, you came from a difficult background, you were a wounded Marine in Vietnam, and then you became a billionaire entrepreneur, a philanthropist. Like, what headline would you put on your own story? How would you describe this journey?
I'd say here's the story of one lucky son of a bitch.
I mean, do you feel more proud of, when you wore your uniform in Vietnam, the companies you built, the veterans you're helping today? I mean, how do you sort of separate all of these different things you've done?
Well, I don't really have to, and to me, I don't look back too much. I look forward, and as far as me being the thing I'm most proud of that I've ever done is I simply say I'm a United States Marine.
Yeah, there you are. Let's start with Marines, shall we? I mean, you were close to flunking out of high school, and then you enlisted in the Marine Corps. What was going on in your life at that moment, and why the Marines?
Well, why the Marines? There was no thought that went into it. I was 17 at the time, and I was getting dressed after gym class at my locker, and I had two friends say to me, we're going to go down and talk to the Marine Corps recruiter. This is back in 1968. The war was raging, and would you like to go with us? And I'd say, sure. And they said, what are you going to do after high school? And I told him, I said, I'm probably going to still be here in high school because I wasn't doing well. I had discovered the opposite sex and alcohol, and neither one has ever been known to put anybody on the dean's list. Mm-hmm. And they certainly didn't do it for me. So we went down, talked to the Marine Corps recruiter. He had us at hello. And, the Marine Corps, the recruiter said to us, I'll never forget, he said, I like you guys. If you want, I'll see if I can get you in. And we're like, oh, yeah, well, would you? So, both my two friends, Aggie, and his name was Agaris, and Charlie, both were 18, so they didn't need any parental signatures. I was 17, so my mother had to sign. She didn't want to at first, but she did. And then he said, we're going to have to check your grades and check with your school that we're going to accept you. Now, I didn't know, but I mean, I could have went there and not even went to school, and I'd have been accepted. But these were different times. The war was raging. They had a lot of help wanted signs posted, especially in the Marine Corps. And so I went and did all my entrance exams for the Marine Corps and the physicals. And I went to see him, and I was thinking, all right, here it comes. And I'll never forget, he said, Robert, we think you'll make a fine Marine.
Well, you want to give someone that real optimism and joy. I mean, if they'd told you that anyone was going to get in, you wouldn't have been nearly as excited.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. But anyhow, I showed my orders all to my different instructors at high school, and they all passed me.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I literally owe the Marine Corps my high school diploma.
Yeah. Take us to Vietnam as well, sort of where you were based. And then can you talk us through the day that you were wounded?
Well, I was a rifleman, 0311 in the Marine Corps, and I was with a combat company, rifle company, which was Delta Company, does 26 Marines, and we were out on Hill 190, which was in the middle of rice paddies as far as you could see, and our job was to run night ambushes and to keep the North Vietnamese out of these little small villages. They would come in, terrorize the villagers. They would, they would do horrific things, but they would take their rice, whatever rice they'd harvested, and use that to feed the troops and so forth. So we accomplished what we were set to do by running night ambushes. And when I first got to my unit, I learned that I was a replacement, one of the replacements for 5 casualties. 4 were killed in action, and 1 was very seriously wounded. And to a man, it was all the senior guys. The new squad leader had been there for 6 weeks, and he just turned 19. As you can imagine, the North Vietnamese, they ran ambushes too, and they were there to return the favors. But by and large, we did what we were supposed to. So that's kind of how what I was welcomed by. And I remember that first day before we went on our ambush. I might have had close to an anxiety attack. I never had one, but I think I might have had one then. And then I just realized, I said, I'm going to be here for 13 months. The other armed forces are 12 months, but not the Marine Corps. And I thought I'm probably going to die here. Matter of fact, I'm going to die here. And the moment I accepted that, Benjamin, and I know it was a small window, but I didn't have a lot of time, I was okay. And so we went on our first night's ambush. That night, one of the Marines had his arm blown off, his side of his head gone, a hand grenade was thrown at him. He went to throw it back, and it went off in his hand. And that was, I saved the guy's life that night. I didn't run in front of a machine gun, but a helicopter was going to land on him, which was the medevac, the helicopter for the wounded Marine. And I seen that was going to happen as clear as day. So I ran and both of us pushed us out of the way of this chopper. And, and that's kind of how it went, a lot of the nights. Other nights, we were bored to tears. And then after 1 month, we were walking on ambush. We're going through a village at night. Point man, I was walking second point. Point man stepped over a tripwire. I hit the tripwire. It was a North Vietnamese hand grenade they called Chi-Coms. That thing exploded, and I was medevaced and all the way to Japan. And I was back to Vietnam a number of times, but never with the rifle company again.
Yeah. Interesting, because I often on this podcast, we speak to people who have gone through, moments like that and traumatic things like that. And I'm always curious and always ask, when you start to rebuild, when you're going through something that difficult, what were the initial thoughts? Was it, I'm done? Was it, I'm going to get through this no matter what? Was there an inbuilt resilience that came through right at that point? What were you feeling right at that moment?
Well, what I did was, when I decided that I definitely was going to die there, I made myself 2 promises. The first promise was I'd do whatever I could to do my job as a U.S. Marine for the guys that I was with, and for my parents and so forth back home, so they'd be proud of me. That was number 1. Number 2, I would do whatever I could to be alive for mail call. And that's the way I got through that month. It was mail call to mail call to mail call. And mail in the military is really an important thing. And I get mail, a lot of days, but a lot of days I didn't get mail. And if I didn't get mail, I'd read my buddy's mail, and he'd read my mail if he didn't get it, and we'd read each other's mail, right? And on and on and on.
More of our conversation right after this. You've been quite open about PTSD and your own experiences with it. When did you first start to sort of feel that something was wrong? When were you not able to clear what was in your mind?
Well, I had PTSD from the day I stepped back on U.S. soil. I mean, I was different. I was different in the sense that I had a temper I never had before. I didn't like being around other people very much, and I was pretty much a social person. But when I left, and things like that, and it actually helped me a lot because I went to college and I graduated magna cum laude. None of my friends could even believe it was me. And that helped me in every business I've ever been in because it gave me the ability to focus and stuff that the Marines taught me. But it really hit me hard when the troops came home from fighting in the Gulf, Operation Desert Storm. And I remember President Bush said, Vietnam's now behind us. And it was like a punch in the gut. And then I started had PTSD so bad. I mean, I would cry a lot when I was alone and stuff like that. I mean, things of that sort.
You've also been you've spoken about sort of seeking serious treatment for it, including sort of new approaches like psychedelic therapy, etc. Like, what made you willing to look for these other new ways of dealing with it? And sort of, do you think that those need to be embraced ever more now?
Well, I think so, but they need to be embraced the right way. They are definitely one of the answers to curing PTSD, but if they're administered the wrong way, they're not a panacea. It is the therapy that you receive from the people that are giving you the psychedelics. That does the healing. The psychedelics makes it possible.
Yeah, I suppose teamwork. A lot of veterans, I suppose, say that they feel some kind of shame. They think that they got PTSD and they feel like they should be tougher, that it's a negative to them. Did you ever feel that? And if so, it's amazing that you were able to motivate yourself. And that's why I'm fascinated. You had PTSD, but you were able to get the GI Bill. You got college degrees. How could you do that while suffering from PTSD?
Well, because, the PTSD, when I first came back, it was at a certain level. It was at a smaller level, and it got worse as time went on.
Because of the lack of treatment.
I don't know. I do know that to know you have PTSD is no small feat, because the human brain normalizes whatever it's dealing with. And most of the guys that I help treat now, they will say to me, I don't have PTSD. And there was a guy, and he was with the Army. He was on a fire base that was overrun, and I mean, all sorts of things happened to him. And I remember saying to him, you got to forgive me for this, but you have PTSD worse than anybody I've ever talked to, right? And I can tell. And what turned him around is I said, don't you want your wife to know what you were like before? Wow. And then if you do this and you are another success, you're helping your other guys that need the help too. And so one of the things I say in my book, which is called Fire in the Hole, is that if you're not sure if you have PTSD, ask those around you. Ask your wife. Ask your kids. They'll know.
Yeah, they'll know the difference. Well, people hear your name. You're very well known. And I suppose many, they just say, billionaire founder of GoDaddy, huge success, and they assume maybe that's a straight line. But perhaps, I'm sure that on your journey, there were moments that didn't work. There were moments where it could have gone the other way too. Like, can you describe some of those? Were there any?
I always had moments that stuff didn't work. I always I have this knack to screw things up. Initially, when I'm getting going, that like for example, when I started the company that became GoDaddy, I had $36 million. And I used to keep, and what I did was I hired a number of people that were really smart. And my deal was I knew the internet was going to be something, is that we would try a number of things and we would quit doing the things that didn't work and keep doing the things that did work. And well, it took us forever to find the things that did work. And so, for example, I got, I used to measure how well I was doing based on how much cash I had. So I said, okay, well, I won't worry about this company till I'm down to 30 million, and then 25 million, and 20 million. And I got all the way down to $6 million, and I decided to close the doors. Right. And the thing that kept me going was one of the things I learned from reading. General Grant always kept his own counsel, and I did too. So I took and decided I'd close the business down. I'd pay my people severance. I'd sell the assets, pay creditors, and when I was deciding this, I was at the Four Seasons Resort in Hawaii by myself, and this guy walks up to me. He's throwing his keys in the air. How you doing, Mr. Parsons? He's valeting the car. He's the happiest guy in the world. I'm thinking, this guy probably has nothing, right? And look how happy he is. I got $6 million and I'm miserable. And I decided right then I would go back and I just keep doing what I was doing until I went broke. Then maybe I'd park cars, or who knows what I'd do, but I'd be happy, and that's exactly what I did. And I was about in February. I did that, and it wasn't much longer. The dot-com crash happened, and when the dot-com crash happened, GoDaddy was born, because all the companies that we were competing with, most of them went away. And we were one of the few companies that were paying his bills. So I had more friends than I thought I had. These were guys that were willing to, before they wouldn't sell me advertising at any price, they gave me advertising. And then I couldn't sell domain names. I sold them like candy after that. And so that following October, we turned the corner, became cash flow positive. That's the first time. And we never missed a month since. And when I did the deal on GoDaddy, we had a 70% market share.
I'm Benjamin Hall, and you're listening to Searching for Heroes. Listening to that, I wonder whether or not your success and what you've done is your ability to take risks and be willing to risk it all. Maybe that's some of the hardest thing to do. Maybe you learned that. Did you learn that in Vietnam? Those night patrols. I mean, you had to learn to gauge risk, and in your business, you pushed, you took risks because other people wouldn't.
The time I was there in Vietnam was, if you're ever going to worry about anything, what's going on over there is what you had to worry about. Getting your hair parted by a bullet. But I never worried. That's one of the gifts somehow I'm born with. But to me, worry is just a beast that'll eat you alive. And you'll find that most of the stuff you worry about never comes true. Yeah.
So we're talking about veterans now and sort of people who are not doing that well, who haven't been able to pull through, and you support so many of them. If someone is listening, they're having a difficult time, maybe they're drinking too much, they're struggling to keep up a job, what would you say to them as the first small step? To do this week? What should they do?
Well, if you're a friend to somebody like that, just be with them. I mean, don't feel like you need to lecture them, because that's going to be lost on them, particularly if you haven't been to where they've been, what they've been through. They'll be reluctant to listen to you. If the guys that'll help them the most are the guys that they were in service with. If they can link back up with them. I remember back when BP had its oil spill, I linked up with the guys I served in Vietnam with for the first time. I found them on the internet. I didn't even know where in the hell they were. So I rode down to Mississippi and Gulfport, and they were having a get together there. Rode down on a motorcycle and spent like 3-4 days with them. And when I left, I felt like I just took a shower. I just never felt so good, because I was with people that knew what I went through. And, because, when you've been in combat, or I guess you're a policeman, or you have all those things that create serious PTSD, you're around people that have no frame of reference of what you could be thinking about. None. And that's the cross to carry.
Yeah. Well, then let's talk a little bit about Semper Fi and America's Fund. You have this double down for veterans campaign. You're going to match up to $7.5 million that is raised by them. Why Semper Fi? Why America's Fund? What is the work that they're doing right now?
Okay, well, what they do is when they get word that a service person has been wounded seriously, the first thing they do is they get in touch with them. They get the people that are out that they can reach and get them to them, and have people around their bed. For a 19-year-old to lose their legs, it's a pretty big deal. And I mean, some of their injuries that are men and women have in combat are just horrific. And so they say, why don't when are you going to get your ass back in the field, and you're going to start getting handled and so forth. And, they feel like, they have a purpose again. And to get their family there with them. So they do that. And then, if they're hurt so bad that they're not going to be able to continue service, they provide them with living quarters that are, conducive to whatever their injury is, and find them something to do. Right. Yeah. And it could be a dog to train. It could be the type of work. It could be something for the fund. But they are like one of a kind.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was injured in Ukraine when I was covering the war, and I was blown up. And I was treated at CFI, at the Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas, when I got my prosthetics. And I was treated alongside all the other soldiers who were recovering there. And the thing that got me better when I was down in Texas was the other soldiers who were around me, who had gone through the same. The ones standing at the end of my bed saying, I've gone through it, you can get through it. And you're right, I don't know if anyone else can really give you that message. If anyone else really knows the path that you've got to be on, being there together. So you've lived, I suppose, the American dream, frankly, poor upbringing, war, trauma, and then enormous success. Got to ask, when you look at America today, do you think that dream is still alive? Like, do you think that we're in a country that is changing and that's disappearing?
Ben, I'm a student of history, right? And, I read a book called American Midnight, which was about what the country went through before World War I, during and after World War I. And
bad times then too, huh?
Well, and then I studied the Civil War and so forth. This country has always changed, excuse me, but, the people think, America, we're dreamed because the Civil War, North won that war, and the North was all about, who you were and what you did, and the South was about, what your daddy owns and so forth. They won that war, and the country changed. So if you ever want to understand this country, you understand the Civil War. Anyhow, the country has overcome everything in front of it, and it's because it is just so different than any other country. You wrote a book called Resolute, What We Humans Know About Finding ways to beat the toughest gods. Now,
Yes,
I know
sir.
you didn't interview me to pitch your book, but I made a point. I am going to read this book.
Hey, thank you. I'll send you my other one saved as well. It's but that's it, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. You know, I think that humans can get to almost anything, and my big question is: are you born with that, or is that from your upbringing in your community? And I don't yet have a real answer. You know, do you think it's nature? Do you think it's nurture, or is it a bit of both? Where does resilience come from?
I think it came from everything. My mother and father were compulsive gamblers. And they weren't very good at it. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, if they had any money, they found a way to lose it. But I wouldn't have traded them for anything. My mother, I can still remember her teaching me when I was a little kid to read the racing form, and which was called the Morning Telegraph now for horse racing, and she out of that she taught me how to about fractions, and I still remember her telling me how an eighth is a much bigger number than a 32nd. And when I was in school, I mean, I didn't do real well, but I nailed fractions because when I was 14, my mother, she used to light me up a cigarette and send me to school. So it was I had a different kind of upbringing.
Yeah. As you look back right now, and if you could go back and talk to that Marine heading to Vietnam yourself, what would you tell him? And what advice would you give to any young guy who is setting off in life, doesn't quite know the path, might not come from very much?
You know what I'd say? I'd say, you need to succeed in life the same way you eat an elephant, a little bit at a time. And that's how I succeeded. I just did a little bit every day. And, that's what I tell my people that work for me to this day. If you leave the office and in some way it's better than it was before, today or yesterday, and it doesn't matter how small, you've done your job.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. You mentioned teams there. You've put together some huge teams, many, many people. What's the best thing to get a team working together? Like, how do you bring people together?
Well, number one, first you need the right people. You need people that want to make a difference, right? And to me, that makes so much more difference than a college degree. Although, I like to see a college degree too, but only to the extent that it means, they can do something for 4 years and get through it. So I think that's good. And, to just give them something to believe in, and if they do, people want to believe in something. I mean, you look at this football, American football or English football, people will throw themselves through the wall over that, and it means nothing, right? Right? Because they want something to believe in. And if you do that with your company, you're going to be successful.
Mm. Do you think that not enough people are really caring about their community much? I mean, I'm so worried about, you made your fortune often online, but how the internet and social media is taking people away from communicating. It's taking people or kids away from talking to one another, to getting out. Is that a concern of yours?
Well, it is. It's a small concern. I'd say that is an issue with a certain percentage of our society, but not all. And it's maybe they'll succeed in a different way, in a way that we never dreamt of. It's just like you say in Resolute, right? Always find a way.
That's it. And how many generations, and going back hundreds and hundreds of years, have said that the latest invention is going to ruin the community, ruin life, and it's only gone out in some ways to make it better and better. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. And I suppose just to finish up, the real point is to think about the people who are not being helped enough. Semper Fi does it. What message do you want to give to the people listening? How can they play a bigger role? What should they be focused on this Christmas when people are out there feeling lonely and maybe don't have that support?
Oh, just reach out to them and be with them. Spend time with them as much as you can, and get them to laugh and reminisce and do stuff like this. As opposed, the last thing you want to be doing is talking about you got a drinking problem, right? Because they're going to avoid you like the plague, right? But and the other stuff. But just be with them.
Yeah. It's often far more simple than we think it is. People want to set up these huge programs and they want you to lecture people and sit them down. Sometimes people just want someone to talk to. They just want a friend by their side. And that's the beginning of creating something bigger and better.
100%.
Yeah, there we are. Hey, Bob, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all the work you do. You really help people when they're low and they need help. And that makes you a real hero. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And mine too. Thank you. Well, there are three things in that interview which I thoroughly enjoyed and which I think really keep me thinking. The first is the American dream. It is so true in everything that Bob did. He had an idea, he wanted to work hard, and he came back from Vietnam and he built an empire. It made billions of dollars as a result. And that happens in America. America rewards those people who have ideas and who want to work hard. And I just think that for someone to serve in Vietnam, to go through what he went through and to go and achieve the things he's achieved, that should inspire everybody, all of us. Also amazing to hear him describe what it was like on those patrols in Vietnam. And just as a brief reminder of just sort of how tough that conflict was, the things that some of those guys had to see. And then also something that we talk about now, but wasn't talked about then, is how people who went through those sort of conflicts fit back into the country, into society when they came back to America. Many of them were forgotten. And that's why he focuses so much on PTSD at the moment and really helping people who are going through what he went through. But then again, he was someone who managed to fix his own PTSD. He thought his way through it and he found solutions. And there's another great message in this. You may encounter problems the way he did, but you can always try and find a way around them. And you can always find a way around them if you keep looking for them, you keep working hard. That's resilience right there. You get knocked down, but you pick yourself up. And that's something that I think we talk about on this podcast time and time again. And then that leads on to this other idea I have a lot, and that is trauma. And what you can do as a result of trauma. Instead of thinking of something traumatic as something that is going to hold you back forever, perhaps in some ways getting through something traumatic, and I know this myself, it makes you stronger. Knowing you have gone through the worst gives you an idea that you can get through anything. So perhaps for everyone listening, if you've gone through something difficult, don't see it as holding you back. Say, I got through that. I beat that. There's nothing that can stop me now. So again, another great lesson I think I learned today. And then I think the last thing is that, again, as Bob just said, when you have gone through something or when you have made something significant, give back. Pass it on. Nothing is about making it just for yourself. If you do well, you got to help others do well afterwards. And so what an amazing character. What an incredible hero. What a great veteran. What an amazing person to pick himself up, get through the odds. Even when he had PTSD, he built something amazing. And I think that's something we must all be inspired by. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for listening. And go out today, and no matter what you're thinking, if you go through something bad, know that you can beat that and you can go and do something amazing. So pick yourself up, go do it. Speak to you next week. Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.